Hey guys, as you get ready to listen to our interview with Richmond Wandera, let me tell you something. We threw a curveball at Richmond right at the end that was so beautiful. It was one of the most beautiful moments I've ever experienced on our nearly 1,000 episodes that we've recorded. But I will tell you this, we experienced spiritual attack in recording this episode like we've never experienced before. Not only does Richmond live in Uganda, Africa, and there's a 9-hour time difference, but we experienced so many technical difficulties, and 1 hour interview took us over 2 hours to record. And I believe when you hear this interview, you're going to find out why. God moves so powerfully through this man, his life, and his insight. It will change your perspective forever.
You hear me and do you see me?
I hear you and see you. How about you?
I see you.
Oh, but about time, man. I don't know what happened there. That's just Satan. I prayed about it. I prayed and it worked. Oh, thank you, Jesus. Okay.
You miracle workers, guys.
Hey, Richmond, it's so good to have you on the show. We have been
right.
looking forward to this for a long time. And man, I just want to, I've read your story. I know a lot of your story. Can you just take some time today and just go back to your childhood and tell us your story?
I want to first bring all the glory to God because I'm only alive because of Him. My life should have ended when I was 8 years old. My life should also have ended when I was 8.5 years old, but it didn't because of Him. And so I get a chance today to tell the story of God. I was born in a big family, a family of six siblings. My mother, she was married off as a teenage girl. She never went to school or had the opportunity to build her skills. But when she was married off, she decided to give herself fully into her marriage. And by the time my mother was 25 years old, she already had 6 children. And her whole life was about taking care of us as kids. My dad, Stephen, he was a hardworking man. We loved him. He worked hard for us. He was the kind of dad who, when he went out to work, he worked hard. And when he came home to his children and his wife, he played hard. I recall one of my greatest memories of him coming through the door, and all of us as kids just run towards him. And we're all trying to hug him fast. And he came up with an idea. Says, how about I carry you up, all of you at the same time? And he was a kind of a bigger guy. And so we thought, oh, dad can do it. But my mom didn't think so. And my mom was right. Halfway into trying to carry all of us, he was now in waves and his legs were beginning to give. And my mom was across the floor just laughing hysterically. As kids, we were lost in that moment. And we had a lot of hope. It's amazing the security, the hope, and the assurance and the confidence that families could experience when families are working right. But that all was taken away from me at the age of 8. Came back home from school. My father had been brutally murdered in the presence of my mom. My whole world was shattered. It felt like the sun had stopped shining. I looked around for my mom, and she was not there. Turned out that when my father fell after he'd been shot 3 bullets in his head, my mother also fell. And she came back to us after 7 hours in hospital. And it was from that time that my whole life changed. We ended up moving from the place we lived to a community called Naguru. It's the kind of slum community I would never wish on my worst enemies. You walk into the space and you see a sea of houses. You try to look around for the children, and the first child you look at, they have this sense of lostness on their face. If you look at where the kids are playing from, you almost want to scream on top of your voice, "Get out of there!" Because these kids are in gullies, dirty spaces. Many of them are not in school. And I remember walking into Naguru slum and just feeling this sense that my life had changed. Like darkness was embracing me. And lo and behold, I arrived at this home. It was a 12 by 12 roomed house. And my mom said, "This is going to be home for us." I remember walking into that home and looking up and looking at all these holes in this tin roof. And I asked myself, what happens when it rains? I was soon to find out, because the rains came. And I remember a night where we began to move from one part of the room to another because of all the dripping. Then we found buckets and put them to place at places where the drips were falling, and that wasn't the worst part. Because our roof was old tin, one night at around 2 a.m. under a massive storm, the center iron sheet of our house was blown off. And I tell you, I stood in that space and watched our one-roomed house become one giant bucket. And my legs were beginning to get lost in the water that was filling our house. And that night I lost something. I don't know whether to call it dignity or a sense of self or sense of self-worth, but I just felt it leave me. I accepted this was life. And from that time, something happened to my soul. My life on the street became more pronounced. I began spending times on the street. I used to spend time with my 6-year-old sister called Doreen, protecting her at a very young age. Most people hear of child-headed homes, but they don't know what that is or what that feels like. At the age of 8, I found myself taking care of my 6-year-old sister. And that happened to some of my other siblings as well, who had to take care of some of the other siblings. But in the middle of desperation, when my potential was cut, when all hope had left, it was when compassion intervened. I was told after a series of events where my picture was taken, and they said to me, "Pray." I did not know how to pray, but pray that you will find a sponsor. And I just hoped. And it was 3 months later that the news that would change my life forever was brought to our home. Richmond has found a sponsor. I can hear those words even this very moment as I speak. Those words would change my life forever. Because I was told, "Richmond, you can now go back to school." I wanted to go back to school, but that door was shut. In a country like Uganda, where education is mostly private, if your parents can't afford for you to go to school, the door is shut. And I told Richmond, this is going to be your number that you can take to any hospital. And anytime you fall sick, anytime you get malaria, anytime you feel like your stomach is making noises and you're having pain in your abdomen, don't run to the Compassion Project. No. Go to any hospital and tell them this number, UG 129/0064. I can never forget that number. Because whenever I went to any hospital and said to them, I'm a sponsored child, they treated me and they sent me away saying, don't worry about the bill.
Man, there is no reason why an audience this big should not sponsor 1,000 children through Compassion International within the next year. That's 500 men sponsoring 2 children. My wife and I do more than that, but if you do 2 children, that's $100 a month. 500 of you step up and do that. We will change the lives of not only 1,000 children, but those families as well, and the people those children marry. You can be a game changer through Compassion International. So guys, help us to achieve our goal of 1,000 children sponsored in the next year.
Wow. My whole life began to look bright. And then came 4 years later, after I had heard the gospel many times at the local church. I finally understood it. The local pastor at our local church is one of my greatest heroes, because he spoke about the scripture like he was pleading with us as kids. And it was his love and his diligence in the word and his relentlessness that helped me realize there's something serious going on. And this message is very serious. And at the age of 14, I became the first Christian in our home. I gave my life to Christ. By the time I was 16 years old, all 5 of my siblings had given their lives to Christ, following in my footsteps. And by the time I was 19 years old, my mother, she blamed God for the death of my father, Stephen. She hated God for being so strong and yet seeing her as a weak, uneducated girl go through what she went through. But yet, at the age of 19, my mom finally came around and she considered how our lives had changed. And she couldn't deny that there is something real at work in her home. She made the decision to follow Christ. By the time I was 22 years old, I had stepped boldly into the space of ministry because I had watched my mom forgive a man who took advantage of her. And I could not understand that. It became clear to me that the gospel is the power of God. Because I don't know a book that my mom could ever read to forgive that man. But yet, out of her own words, she was saying, I forgive him. And I wanted to know what that was. So from the time of the age of 21 to the time I was 22, I invested in the word of God. And long story short, I ended up becoming a pastor. It is with great joy that I share with you here and now that I'm currently the lead pastor of the very church that I walked into as an 8-year-old boy without hope. And now I get to stand at the door and welcome kids in and to say, come and see the God who saved me, because he'll save you too.
Wow. So
I'll pause for now because it's super exciting what God has done.
that is just amazing. And the story is horribly tragic with a miraculous ending. I do have a question. So, because I know you've done much more than being just a lead pastor. That's very important. You got a lot more going on. But I do have this question: when you talk
Yes.
about having a child sponsor, did your 5 siblings get sponsored as well?
My sister Doreen also got sponsored. The other four did not get sponsors, but I tell you this, Compassion has worked it out. And I know this to be true because it's my experience that when two kids in a family are sponsored, the portions, the opportunities that these kids receive extend sufficiently to the siblings. In fact, my brother Ronald, who plays rugby today, we joke about him saying, I'm paid for hitting people. And he laughs. But this is what he said to me, Richmond, I survived because you were sponsored. We, we slept under the same mosquito net. All boys slept under my mosquito net, while all the girls slept under Doreen's mosquito net. When we came back from the Compassion Project with food in our hands, we never said, this food belongs to me. No, this food belonged to the family. One day when my mom's health was failing, it was affecting me at school. Compassion has a very unique program, or it is an allocation to support the child's family. And my mom's health ended up being restored because Compassion spent on my mom. And then later on taught my mom how to work, how to use her hands. And then my mom now is financially free. She's financially independent because, again, Doreen and I were sponsored. So, I mean, Compassion has figured this thing out perfectly.
So, Richmond, when you said you were sponsored at 8 years old, how many? So, my wife and I sponsored children as well through Compassion. How many families have sponsored you since you've been 8 years old when you first were sponsored?
Oh, so my sponsor sponsored me all through to finishing high school. And typically, that is when the Compassion sponsorship time finishes. But Compassion then created a very unique opportunity for those sponsors who wanted to continue sponsoring their kids through to college. And my sponsor at the time, who had already taken on many other children, unfortunately was not able to sponsor me through college. But then she had a friend, and she told her friend who was in business that, hey, I would really like to sponsor Richmond, but I can't physically or financially. And his friend, I mean, her friend was able to. And that's when I got the second sponsor. But by this time, I had finished my time at the tradition program level. And now I was going to college sponsored by a friend of my sponsor. And that's who carried me through to afford my tuition fees as I pursued my bachelor's degree in accounting. And then later on, a master's degree in theology, and then obviously later on a PhD in philosophy of leadership.
So this second family that sponsored you for how many years is that? Four to, I mean, that'd be 10 years in America.
Well, so they sponsored me through for the next 3 years, which is our college is different from the USA college. In the USA college is 4 years. Here in Uganda, it's 3 years because we do one extra year in high school.
Okay.
But um, when the sponsor took me on after college, by the grace of God, I studied very hard and I graduated summa cum laude with a first class degree. And from then on, it's been scholarship after scholarship. And it's been a real blessing to see institutions and schools give me those opportunities.
So you went on after you got your PhD. I don't know if you did this after, but you started Pastors Discipleship Network.
Yes, I did. So after watching my mother forgive the man who had abused and violated her, I I couldn't understand that. And as I had said, I really began to read the scriptures incessantly. And I ended up becoming a pastor. But remember, I had no theological or ministry training. And as much as my heart was in the right place, I made so many mistakes in my leadership as a pastor. I didn't understand teams. I didn't understand how to work with volunteers. I didn't understand how to organize. I didn't understand so many questions in theology about suffering, about life, about death that was surrounding me in my community. And I was really frustrated and unprepared for the ministry. And God, through his providence and through, again, connections through Compassion and Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, I ended up going to do my master's degree in spiritual formation and discipleship to find help to answer the critical questions that I was battling with. And I ended up on Moody, and God has a great sense of humor. I mean, taking a student from Uganda, which lies on the equator, and of all places in the US, brought me to the Windy City.
Chicago, baby.
Man,
Little cold in the winter, huh?
from the time I arrived, I said, "What have these people done to the Lord to to, to rain down such harsh cold?" And that was going to be my home for about a year and a half. And
Oh man.
I couldn't wait to come back to Uganda. And it was at that time that I began to be burdened for pastors such as myself in Uganda who were operating blind. They had no training. Many of them have no Bibles, have no full Bible. Many of them have been mentored under doctrines and expressions that are akin to African traditionalism and witchcraft and voodoo. And they're bringing that practice back in church because that's all they know. Essentially, many of the pastors in Africa were, by my estimation, sincerely wrong. That's all they knew. And so I spent a lot of time at Moody Bible Institute learning. And I was probably one of the most diligent students they found because I was not just reading for me, I was reading for my pastors back home. And so I ended up coming back to Uganda and mobilizing 115 pastors at the beginning and sharing them, hey guys, this is what I have learned. And it was there that the movement that has now come to be known as Pastors Discipleship Network began. Fast forward a few years later, as of this year, 2025, we have just celebrated 15,533 pastors across 8 East African nations that have gone through my Rooted in the Word pastor training.
Oh wow! From a 8-year-old
Yeah.
kid with no hope and no roof on a 12 by 12 hut, you have created an organization that has discipled 15,535 pastors in East African countries. Did I hear that right?
That's absolutely right. 15,533. We celebrated. We had letter after letter after letter, pastors writing about how their marriage at home has changed and is different, how their view of God was different, how healthy their churches are, how they're planting churches. We had letters upon letters. And I tell you, I just literally lay with my belly with my just face on the ground, just saying, God, who knew that a kid whose potential was dying on the street, the number of people that walked past me, oh my word, I just think about it now. I see that, considering my story, that potential is everywhere. Potential is in every child. Potential is everywhere. And so when a person stoops down to the eye level of a child and gets on their knee, what they're looking at could never fully be revealed to them, because that's the future. When you look at a child, you're looking at the future. A child is filled with so much potential that if you decide, look, I will live with less so that this kid can have some more. I might have messed up my chances, but I want to give someone else a chance. I want to live simply so that someone else can simply live. I believe that as people make those radical decisions to say, look, if Jesus laid down his life for me, the calling naturally is that I will do the same for someone else. And how awesome it is when a person does that for a child who cannot speak for themselves, who cannot help themselves, who is beset by such a strong force called poverty and darkness that the child cannot break free until somebody helps them break free. And so that's what exactly happened to me. And now this potential that was dying on the street is finally let out. And now I'm making my contribution to my nation. I'm making my contribution in the kingdom. I've been released to do that. And so my invitation, I think, and my challenge to people is like, hey, every day you're fighting for something, but whatever you're fighting for, it better be worth it. And every day you're investing your time, you're investing your resources, you're investing yourself. But I pray that whatever you're investing in better be worth it. I believe that when that young 15-year-old girl, Heather, decided to invest in me, seeing what's come out of this, I think that investment was worth it. And I'm excited for many hundreds of people, thousands of people who have come to that same decision that, look, I'll come alongside a child and give this child some potential and release them to the best that they can be.
Hold on a second. You're telling me that when you were 8 years old, you were sponsored by a 15-year-old American girl.
That's right. A 15-year-old girl. This girl she lives in Wales now, but by the time she was in the United Kingdom when she sponsored me.
That's mind blowing. Not only did she sponsor you, but because of your sponsorship, she indirectly sponsored your brothers.
Absolutely.
And did she sponsor
15-year-old girl?
Did she sponsor Doreen, or was that another family?
That was another family that sponsored Doreen.
You know, a mutual friend of ours, Wes Stafford, said that when you are in the presence of a child, you are standing on holy ground. Why do you think Wes said that?
See, a child has God-given potential. Mm-hmm. A child bears the image of the Most High God. A child is watched over by God, for the Bible says his eye is on them, watching over them. He abides in the praise of children. And so essentially, when you're standing in the presence of a child, you are beholding the very image of the Most High God. That is holy ground. That is holy ground.
I couldn't agree with you more. So hearing your story I'm speechless in hearing your story, but your story doesn't end there. I have heard a little rumor that you have taken the Pastor's Discipleship Network and that you're about ready to launch your own university, Cornerstone University. Can you tell us the journey there? Did you know I knew that? Did you know I knew that?
I didn't know you knew that.
Oh, I know that. I know things.
So, I'm actually quite, just blown away by how much you know of me. So I'll tell you the three reasons I founded this university. The first reason is that pastors in Africa are hungry. They want to know God. Pastors want to write about God. They want to articulate themselves and their own life journeys of suffering and standing in God and seeing his hand in a way that makes sense. But they have no skills, they have no tools, they have no competency to do that. And I meet pastors like Pastor Rengo, and he looks at the space where he wants to build a church, and all I see is one trip of bricks and one trip of sand, and he's saying this place in 2 years will have a place where people can gather to worship. And I think about how he's thinking, his faith, and that story, and I consider what life is in the West and how, I mean, there's a lot of in the West, there's obviously a lot of logic and a lot of budgeting, a lot of projection, and a lot of which is great. But I do think that the West can learn a lot from African pastors on how we take steps by faith and perseverance in prayer and call things to be as though they are. And in surely due time, it is established. And I think that there is much of the African story, whether it's our understanding of unanswered prayer or answered prayer or perseverance, or our overnight culture where we pray 8 hours every Friday from 8 p.m. to about 6 a.m. the next day. It's all that must be written. And I feel like equipping the African church with both the skills and that comes through study. And so there is a place for theology and ministry where it is of benefit to the church, but there is the expression that enables the African church to bring its contribution to the world and to the global church conversation. The second reason we're establishing Cornerstone University is because there's been a shift in the dynamics of government policies around churches. Many of the churches in Rwanda were closed because of a lot of mistakes the church had made. And now the president of Rwanda requires that every church must have a pastor that has gone through accredited training. And so what started in Rwanda went and extended off to Tanzania, and now it is in Uganda. And so government regulation, which was initially less than the church was experiencing, has now become more. And so the government of Uganda now is requiring pastors to have accredited training if they're going to perform weddings, if they're going to register new churches. And so the church feels it's a panic season for us. And of the few universities that Uganda has, significantly few offer anything remotely theological or ministry training. And so for that reason, we must establish a university now to answer that great need, to, in essence, to keep church doors open. We've got to start this university. But the third reason is that discipleship has not been part of the African church culture. We're good at preaching, we're good at worship, we're good at prayer. But when it comes to answering the question, is the church in Africa grounded in the word of God? The answer is no. Is the church in Africa making disciples? The answer is no. It is so disturbingly true that the church in Africa is described as a church that is a mile wide and an inch deep. And so for us, we feel that it's going to take gathering a few people within the African society and training them thoroughly enough, so much so that they're able to go back and train others. And that is key in raising the ministers of tomorrow. And the very last reason I'd say is that Uganda today is the 40th most corrupt country in the world. And yet we are 84% a Christian nation. So when you think about that, you're like, how is it that a nation is 84% Christian? We are probably one of the most churched nations in the world. And yet we are one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And there is rumor that that we had to bribe to be named the 40th most corrupt country in the world. What that means is that we are so much worse than what that statistic is saying. And so we cannot see our roads and our hospitals and our water wells, all that get decimated because of corruption. Corruption affects daily life in our society. And so we've got to raise a new generation of leaders who are transformed from inside out. And so Cornerstone University is bent on a very strong agenda to help raise the next generation of African leaders who will fear God and yet serve professionally in the marketplace. That's why we're not only offering theology and ministry, we're offering other courses in applied business administration, in social work and social administration, in information and communications technology, in green engineering. We are, by the grace of God, already building such a strong reputation across the nation as the leading university in raising Africa's professionals. Yet at the same time, they're not just professionals, but they're people of character. And so, yeah, I'm very, very excited about Cornerstone University.
So
we'll be having about 10,000 students online and 3,000 students on our campus.
So can an American
be graduating a whole bunch.
Can an American apply and become a student at Cornerstone University?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we have people out of Uganda who have already begun applying, and some have already been admitted. So yes.
Wow, I might have to think about that. That might be a great PhD program. Hey, I do have one more. I have a question for you, Richmond. So, man, I'll tell you, this story is so powerful and so God ordained, and I'm just so impressed with you. So you had been sponsored by a 15-year-old girl up until college. So you said another family sponsored you. Can you tell us about the family that sponsored you through your college education?
Yes. This is a family that had a business and they wanted to steward that business well. They viewed this business as God's entrusting to them of something that could literally change people's lives. And it was a nursery. It was a garden. I mean, they sold flowers and plants in the United States. And so they came alongside me and they enabled me to go to college and to study my first degree in accounting. And just as a side note, I studied accounting because I wanted to bring healing to my corrupt country by raising ethical accountants. And I ended up teaching at the university in the space of accounting for a while. But this family, they believed in me and they wrote letters to me. And you could see their prayers in their letters. And it wasn't easy, my time at college. There was so much pulling at me. And sometimes as I went back to my community, I could get discouraged. And sometimes I could feel like I didn't perform as well in a certain course or in a certain test. And sometimes I was just like, God, I love you, but this world I'm living in, there's so much pain and darkness. And sometimes it's just being felt like surrounded by darkness. And in that time, those letters were light to me. because I went back and read and said, these are prayers people are praying for me. I better get my house in order. I better get up and get my tools and get back to work. And so I want to encourage everyone who has a sponsored child, write to them. Whatever is on your heart, don't think about their age much. Just write to them, because they will go back to those letters at a certain time. And God will use those letters to strengthen them in times of discouragement, in times when they are failing, in times when the world is closing in around them. Those letters will be used as light, because that's exactly my story. Both Heather's letters and my other sponsor, the Robinsons' letters, completely brought light back to me. And I kept feeling like, man, I have to account because this is an investment. And so these were such, they journeyed with me all across my time of pursuing my accounting degree. And I was very honored when I finished my degree and they said to me, Richmond, we're going to fly all the way to Uganda to attend your graduation.
Okay, so you said that when you graduated from college, your sponsor family came and visited you. They came to Uganda?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. So nothing could have prepared me for that. Nothing in the world could have prepared me for that, because these guys had loved on me. They wrote, my sponsor used to write long letters, and they were very detailed in there. And so I always kept coming back to these letters. And now to be at my graduation and surrounded by children, I tell you, it was the best gift God has ever given me. Obviously, apart from Christ saving me. It was just incredible just standing in their presence and to say, hey, guys, this is the investment you made, and I'm going to make you guys proud. So I've not stopped since.
Wow. Well, Philippians chapter 4, Paul talks about receiving the gift from the Philippians, not that he needed the gift, but he wanted to credit it to their account. And there's something special when you give to a ministry. And Richmond, I haven't brought this up, but do you remember me? It was in McMinnville, Oregon, with Rick Robinson.
Oh, yes.
So
of course.
So listen, I don't know if you know. Can you see Josh Robinson on the screen right now? Rick's son Josh is here on the call.
What's going on, man? Did you guys hear me okay?
Whoa!
My camera just went blurry. That is so strange, but it is so good to see you.
Oh my God! What a gift! What a gift! Oh my word! I just want to pierce through this screen right now and just come and hug you right now.
I will give you a virtual hug. Speaking of hugs, I don't know if you got the text I sent you this morning, but it was with my son Caden and one of the guys, and I can't remember his name, but that was the moment of the trip when we were out there where everything changed for my son. So I don't know if you got the text, but I sent it to you. But yeah, speaking of hugs, that was a good one.
Oh my word! I can't wait to read the text. Ever since I got up in the morning, I have been running around like a headless chicken, we say here. But Josh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm failing to control myself here now. I needed someone to calm me down. Josh, I am so happy to have you and to see you. And please, hug your family for me. Hug Chris for me. hug everyone for me, and Jenny and Rick and Roxanne, and just hug them. Now, this was okay. Only God could set up something like this. Here I am talking about a family that changed my life when I could not continue. And
hey, Richmond, let me tell you something that's really cool. You want to hear something cool? So let me tell you this, Richmond. So because of your sponsorship, Rick is a dear friend of mine, and Josh and Chris and I meet together. We do a Bible study every Wednesday together, and their family convinced me to get involved with Compassion. So because of their connection to you and others, we began sponsoring children, and Compassion reached out to us and said, because you're sponsoring children, we want to sponsor your podcast. And we said, well, we want to bring Richmond on. And they said, no, you'll never get Richmond. He's too busy. I'm like, that's who we want.
oh my word. This can only be God's working.
Yeah.
This is only be God's working. I do remember now, everything has just come back to me full picture. I remember that time we had a meal.
Yes.
I remember signing up for the men's emails and messaging, and I've been getting those since. Now, for some reason, when Compassion reached out to me about a podcast, and they began to describe it, I think I got lost in the description. They said, Richmond, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. I said, yes, I can't wait to be on. And little did Compassion know that I had actually met you before. And then I'm coming on this, getting excited about men and getting excited about what men can do for God and for this world. And then you have a surprise for me. Like, I don't know who my wife is going to hug tonight when I get home. I just don't know.
Oh, well, hey, because of you, Richmond, because of you and because of the Robinsons' connection to you, we believe that God is going to raise up men and women from this episode to sponsor over 1,000 Compassion children.
I believe that.
We just believe that.
I prayed for that.
Josh, from a guy who you're the same age as Richmond, you've met Richmond, you've gone to Uganda, you've celebrated Richmond. What would you like to say in conclusion?
Oh, I would say take the step, sponsor a child with compassion. Write the letters. You have no idea the impact that you'll have in their life. I mean, you got an insight into that with what Richmond was talking about and how deeply he felt about that and the impact it had on him. You just don't know with one small step. And let's be real, in our world, a very small financial obligation, the impact that will carry to somebody in another part of the world that could potentially rise up and be the next Richmond, or who knows. I would just highly encourage anybody that's feeling it or has a conviction, just do it. Do it now.
Richmond, you said it best, brother. You're one yes. Just say yes. So, Richmond, I know it's getting late where you're at. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump off this call, but we're gonna leave you guys open. We're gonna leave the call open so you guys can talk some more. All right? Does that sound all right?
Yeah, all right. Richmond, if you got a few minutes, I got a few minutes.
I got a few minutes, friend.
All right. Hey, Richmond, God bless you, brother. Man, I hope to see you soon, man. Thank you so much. Sorry that I surprised you.
Jim, man, you just like 1,000 highlights. Wow.
He kept saying, "How you know more about me than I think you should know."
You're creeping.
Guys, make sure that you subscribe to this podcast app if you haven't done so yet. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please copy the link and send it over to one of your bros. Man, this helps us climb the charts, and you've helped us so much to become the #1 podcast in the world for Christian men. Until next time, feel the wet sand on the arena floor. Hear the deafening roar of the crowd. Taste the sweetness of victory. Smell the stench of battle. Get in the game. Get dirty. Grind it out. Sponsor a compassion child. And be a man.